What does it really mean to love your enemy? Not from a distance, and not when they've changed, or not when they've admitted that they've harmed you, but what does it mean to love your neighbor while they're still trying to harm you? See, that's where the idea of loving your enemy stops being poetic and it starts being transformational. Now, I want to be honest. Everything in me wants justice, as I'm sure it is in you also. We want control. We want to not lose. And if we're being honest about this and real and authentic, we want a little bit of payback when our enemy does something wrong to us. And the reason for that is we're wired that way. We're wired to defend ourselves, to justify ourselves, to protect our dignity, to make things even when they're not even. And sometimes when a person mistreats you or lies about you or maliciously gossips about you or disrespects you, loving them feels unnatural. It feels borderline stupid to do because we're not wired to do that. But what if I told you loving your enemy is actually the most powerful thing that you can do? When you prioritize grace over vindication, something radically happens inside of you. You stop living reactively. You stop responding to everything that happens. You stop taking things so personal, and you no longer look like a mirror reflecting other people's behavior, but you become the source of grace and virtue. Instead of asking a question like, how do I respond to them? You begin asking questions like, what do I choose to be right now regardless of them? Because really this is about me. That's where the shift really happens. Everything starts to shift when you start asking that question, what kind of person do I want to be? Instead of being manipulated by other people's behavior into becoming a person that you don't want to be, in those moments, if you ask, what kind of person do I want to be? It reshapes and shifts everything. Because now your character isn't being shaped by your enemies and their behavior. It's being anchored in something deeper, something unmistakable. So I want to clear something up. Loving your enemy is hard to define. Not because I haven't heard tons of definitions, but it's hard to define. So the easiest way to define what it means is to rule out what it doesn't mean. So it doesn't mean three things. Number one, loving your enemy does not mean letting people walk all over you. That sort of passivity is not something to which a believer is called. Secondly, loving your enemy does not mean that you ignore wrong or you ignore injustice. You just kind of suppress it and push it aside. That's not what loving your enemy means. And then thirdly, loving your enemy doesn't mean staying in harmful situations. Loving your enemy in this context is not weakness. And I think a lot of times we confuse loving our enemy with weakness or letting things go. But loving your enemy in this context is clarity. Loving your enemy means you refuse to let hatred take root in you. You set boundaries without bitterness. You act from integrity and not impulse. So you can start to say no with peace. You can walk away from circumstances and situations without resentment. You can protect yourself without poisoning your own spirit. And that love is the strongest form of love there is. Because the world rewards the opposite, as you well know. Aggression in the world is what gets attention. Self-interests in the world is what gain results. And retaliation is what feels satisfying, at least In the moment, it does. Anybody who has actually retaliated knows that in the moment it feels really good, but afterwards there's a hidden cost. There's a hidden cost to self-interest and retaliation. Every time you act from anger, you tie your peace to someone else's behavior. I want you to think about that. Why would you take your peace, which is a gift from God, and give your peace to the behavior of an enemy? You take your peace and tie it to somebody else's behavior. Now they control the way you feel. They control the way you respond. They control your inner world and the story that you tell yourself about it. That's a very dangerous place to live when you tether your peace to someone else's behavior. So how do you actually live out this principle, this precept, this rule, this command, love your enemy? Well, the issue is not all at once, but it's consistently. It's something we learn. And in the process of learning how to love our enemy, we have to unlearn everything that's already natural to us. We build a long-term internal architecture within ourselves. So here's what that looks like on a daily basis. Number one, daily inner work. You don't wait for conflict to practice grace. You cultivate it in the quiet moments through reflection and prayer and journaling and stillness. Because you can't access peace under pressure if you've never practiced it in the calm. Number two, redefine strength. Strength is no longer winning arguments or proving people wrong. Strength is staying grounded when everything in you wants to react. Number three, clear boundaries without emotional chaos. You see, you decide what you will and will not tolerate, but you enforce it without hatred. That's called discipline. And the fourth thing is you detach your peace from outcomes. You stop needing people to understand you, to validate you, or to change. You do what's right and you release the rest. And here's where all of this really comes together. You become unshakable. Not because people stop hurting you, but because your peace is no longer dependent on them and their behavior. Think about that. Your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's behavior. That's what it truly means to love your neighbor. Your peace is separated now, divorced from your enemy's behavior. That is real freedom. Because now their anger toward you doesn't define your response. And their actions towards you don't dictate your identity. And their chaos doesn't enter your inner world. You're no longer reacting to them. You're choosing. You're choosing to love your neighbor, love your enemy. So loving your enemies isn't about changing them. Loving your enemy is about refusing to let them change you. And that's the principle you need. Loving your enemy is refusing to let them change you. It's about building a life that is rooted deeply in grace, the grace of the gospel, so much so that no external force can shake that deeply rooted grace in you. You see, that kind of strength doesn't come from control. That kind of strength comes from knowing the one who is in control. And I want you to remember this. Peace really begins in your life the moment that you no longer need your enemy to be different. So here's the call to action for you. If this resonated with you, I want you to take a moment today, not a moment to try to fix somebody else. That's typically what we do. I don't want you to fix somebody else, but what I want you to do is I want you to reclaim your inner ground, that story within you. I want you to redefine what love and loving your enemy really is. And if you want more content like this, I want you to subscribe and stay connected. Because here we're not just talking about ideas, but we're trying to build a brand new way to live those ideas.